What do you do if you can't give God 10% of your income? When you study tithing, and especially if you hear pastors talk about tithing, they're all about you want to give God 10% because that's really what tithing means. Tithe means 10%, and especially when you look at the original Greek and the Hebrew about what it talks about. But when we go and look at what the New Testament says and what Jesus specifically talked about tithing, a lot of that was in context of how that you need to tithe and give on what you give, but he doesn't say like this is actually that you have to tithe. But what he does talk about is that you need to be generous. You need to be generous with what you have. And the true reality is that there's sometimes, especially if you're already established and you haven't been giving to God from the very beginning, trying to take 10% out of your budget and giving it to God can be difficult. It can almost be detrimental to your income and your way of life and how you do things, especially if you're living way above your means. And so what you actually need to do is what you can do is that when you choose to give God first, what you can do is you can choose to give God first a smaller percentage. Give him 1%, 2%, 3%, because you can start there. And that's the key, is that you can start. And then as you start there, you then make a plan. You schedule yourself a financial meeting and you sit down with you and your spouse, or if you're by yourself, just by yourself, and you plan out, and it's like, okay, I'm going to give this much. And then after a month or a quarter, you go back and reevaluate. And after a year, you go back and look and say, and what you're doing is you're gradually working your way up to 10%. And once you get all the way to that 10%, then you know that you're tithing and you're giving God everything he has. And we can rest on the promise that God made through Malachi in Malachi 3:10, where he says, bring the full tithe into the storehouse. Test me in this, because then I will throw open the floodgates of blessing